Journalists expressing their excitement on October 7th. They participate in genocide and take video.
This wouldn't be the first time journalists were involved in Hamas activity or sympathized with its October 7 massacre.
شوفوا يا جماعة كيف سحب الجندي من الدبابة. هيو شايفين كيف؟ هيو ثواني هيو شايفين كيف سحبوا يا جماعة؟ هيو طيب الميت ميت يا خبتي مشاهد عالمية.
Back in January, I-24 News aired footage of two Palestinian journalists working with the world's biggest news agencies, such as Reuters and the Associated Press, sharing experiences of joining Hamas during their raid on Israel.
احنا رحنا يمكن من ساعتين تمام اول ما صار الشيء وصلنا حدود خزاعة وين الجدار لقينا الناس بدخلوا يعني صعب اوصف لكم المشهد الاف مؤلفة ملايين كل غزة يا جماعة طبعا بعتقد انه فجأة بتلاقي اللي مروح بجيب تسان اللي مروح بجيب سرنته اللي مروح بجندي حامله بين ايديه اللي مروح بمستوطنة والله مستوطنات يمكن انا شفت لا يقل عن 50 مستوطنة روحوها الشباب في زب.
And it's incidents like these that raise a big question mark over who is actually an uninvolved civilian.
Just salute the Israeli government and the Knesset for banning Al Jazeera. It is time to not allow for literally TV stations who their sole purpose is to radicalize, dehumanize, and incite violence and anti-Semitism and hate for these channels to not be allowed to operate freely. You know, this is a major problem that we've been having in the Middle East, and this very important step by Israel to ban Al Jazeera is something I could not tell you how important and how crucial this is. And I just
This is a short story on one of the finest Secret Service agent named Fupa. I am sure you guys will like it.
Today, we're about to witness the remarkable feats of one of the Secret Service's finest, Agent Fupa. She's not just any agent. She's a highly trained, specialized operative. Picture this, a modern-day ninja with the wit and charm of Rosie O'Donnell, gracefully donning a pair of sunglasses. Watch closely now as Agent Fupa skillfully reholsters her sidearm, having just single-handedly saved the president's life. A true testament to the excellence and dedication of the Secret Service. Now let's not forget the mastermind behind this elite force. The Secret Service's very own director, Kimberly Cheadle. She's the one responsible for hiring, equipping, and training these outstanding agents through her visionary diversity, equity, and inclusion program.
Of making sure that we need to attract diverse candidates and ensure that we are developing and giving opportunities to everybody in our workforce, and particularly women.
That workforce will be pivotal for the 2024 campaign
training
season.
grounds.
A training camp of Hamas. Notice something unbelievable, or two things. First of all, this doesn't look like an IDF camp. It looks like Israeli kibbutz, a town. Further than that, look at the ambulance. Why Hamas terrorists have a civilian ambulance in one of the training camp, and the training camp is actually a town in Israel, which means from the beginning, they trained to enter Israeli towns and kill Israeli civilians. And further than that, they've been using the civilian ambulance in their camps. So here's the question. Why this ambulance is here? Are they carrying someone, a senior of Hamas, and this is the way to protect them? Or is this part of their camp? And is this part of their training to attack Israeli ambulances? But this is the reality.
These are four major points that two states theory will never work, and these are absolutely true.
On why the two-state solution was stillborn was a wrong thing from the get-go. One, the two-state solution was incredibly ahistorical. How come Palestine wants to rise up exactly where the ancestral homeland of the Jewish people was? Maybe Palestine isn't really about a Palestinian state, but about the erasure of our historical narrative. It has been said many times, if we have no right to live in Hebron, we have no right to live in Tel Aviv. Point number two was that the other side, the interlocutors, were never going to accept a small, tiny state. It never made sense. And if you listen to Prime Minister Netanyahu, it's a very paternalistic offer he's making. You have to recognize me only in these certain borders. I will have security here and here. You can't have an airport. You can't have a port, a seaport. And, of course, you have to be demilitarized. What kind of offer is that? If it's really their land, then get the hell off and don't tell me how to run it. If it's not their land, then why are you making that offer? It doesn't make any sense. It was never going to fly. Nobody was going to accept it. It was never going to work. And third, which is very, very important, is that I'm going to say something that Western ears love to hear. Watch this. This is really important to me, and I'm willing to compromise on it for peace. I'm willing to give it away, although I love it, because I want peace with you. Isn't that beautiful? Isn't that beautiful? Doesn't that sound amazing? Like something that I cherish in my heart, I'm willing to give you. Doesn't that sound beautiful? But that's not the way it sounds in Middle Eastern ears. Because you don't compromise on certain things. You don't compromise on your wife, right? What we say, I'm willing to talk about Jerusalem because I'm willing to give it up for peace. Here's what the Middle Eastern ear hears. Here's my wife. Take her. Do whatever you want. Just don't hurt me, right? I'm willing to do anything for peace. I'm scared. So whenever you talked about two-state solution in the Western ear, it was like, that is beautiful. And the Middle Eastern ear is like, that guy is a loser, and we're going to crush him in time. Let's take what we can get now and keep going. Lastly, the two-state solution was, number 4, is simply an empirical failure. We have tested it. It is one of the best tested political solutions of all time. We have tested it in South Lebanon. We walked out and we gave South Lebanon back to the Lebanese. We walked out of Sinai. We walked out of Judea and Samaria. And we walked out of Gaza. Every single one of those has turned into our cancer. Every single one of those has become a forward base of the jihad, especially the last one, Gaza. Guys, people like myself were saying that if we walked out of Gaza, in a year it would be a terrorist state. And we were wrong. It took 6 months, okay? And it became one of the worst terrorist states that we're dealing with. And we have now fought 3 wars in 7 years. Ouch. Bad move. So when somebody says to you, let's keep going with the two-state solution, you have to ask
Now
them,
these are the consequences for your actions, and these are absolutely correct.
College students who took part in anti-Israel protests, some of them now receiving no need to apply messages. And now a prominent New York law firm has even hired a company to do background checks and scour social media posts to make sure new hires were not part of those very public protests. NewsNation investigative correspondent Rich McHugh joins us live. And Rich, you have details on why these students are being eliminated from hiring consideration.
Absolutely, Nicole. So this spring, protests erupted on dozens of campuses around the country. It drew thousands of students to these protests, and over 2,600 students, protesters, were arrested. And now many of them are facing long-term consequences, being frozen out of possible future jobs, even let go from current jobs. The epicenter of all this was at Columbia University this spring, where protesters occupied the lawn and then forcefully took over Columbia's Hamilton Hall. The NYPD arresting dozens nationwide. I said more than 2,600 were arrested in these pro-Palestinian campus protests. Now, more repercussions, job application scrutiny, in some cases, offers rescinded. The New York Wall Street legal firm Sullivan & Cromwell is the latest company to take a stand requiring job applicants to explain their participation in these protests, according to the New York Times. But they're not alone. A new poll by the online research group Intelligent.com shows students who participated in protests may face long-term consequences. 29% of activists had a job offer rescinded in the last 6 months. 7 out of 10 pro-Palestinian activists say interviews have asked about their protest history.